The movie commences in East Java in 1986, where Susanna and her fiancé Surya arrive home. Upon their arrival, they witness a group of thugs threatening Susanna's parents. Confronting her parents, Susanna learns that her father had staked their house and rice fields in a cockfight and lost. This led to Rod and Aryo to send the thugs to collect the debts. Surya inquires if there's an alternative, but the thug dismisses him, saying that he's not part of their family. As the situation becomes tense, Susanna steps in, begging the thug for time to settle the matter. But the thug dismisses her plea, asking how they'll justify this to their boss. In an attempt to stall for time, Surya offers his goat, prompting the thug to depart. He warns them to prepare within 3 days, as they will be back for the money. The next day, Aryo extends an invitation to Susanna and her parents for a feast at his mansion. During the gathering, Susanna's scared father informs Aryo that if he has summoned them for the money, they have none left. However, the old man says that their meeting isn't about discussing finances. Flaunting his wealth, he says that he already possesses everything. The only thing that he lacks is an heir to inherit all that he has. Hearing this, Susanna gets startled and confronts this old fart. She directly addresses him, asking what he is getting at. Hearing her speak up, Aryo blatantly proposes that Susanna marry him and bear him an heir, in exchange for which he will absolve all debts owed by her father. He makes sure to repeat that it is not a request, neither a deal but an order. Compelled by the circumstances, Susanna agrees to marry Aryo. However, during the marriage ceremony, a heartbroken Surya tries to intervene. Amidst the chaos, a fire erupts, causing panic and a stampede. He calls out the old creep and attempts to take back his fiancée, but to no avail. Aryo's henchmen forcibly subdue him. Despite his attempts to fight back, poor Surya is apprehended. Aryo then administers punishment by publicly whipping him in front of Susanna. After brutally cutting and bruising the poor boy, Aryo tries to sever Surya's hands. Seeing this, a crying Susanna falls at Aryo's feet, pleading with him not to proceed. She offers to comply with any of his demands if he pardons Surya. Much to her horror, the man seizes her hand and drags her to the bedroom to have his way with the poor woman. The few days that follow, Aryo keeps sleeping with Susanna. His wife Manati keeps getting restless. One night, she asks him to accompany her, but he refuses and goes to the other girl's bedroom after saying that she cannot give him an heir. The next morning, an angry Manati asks her servant to go and fetch Susanna's comb, probably plotting some ugly trick. Several days later, Susanna awakens abruptly to discover movement beneath her blanket. With trepidation, she uncovers it to find a multitude of snakes on her bed. As she attempts to flee, she realizes that numerous serpents are also slithering across the floor, prompting her to hastily escape from her room. Sometime later, Aryo assembles the villagers and announces a prosperous harvest. He also reveals the news of Susanna's pregnancy and implores the villagers to pray for the well-being of their eagerly anticipated child. That evening, Aryo's first wife, Manati, seeks out a shaman, expressing dissatisfaction with the outcome of their previous spells. It turns out that, as anticipated, she was the one who cast that ugly spell. She tells the shaman that the snakes failed to fulfill their purpose. When questioned by the shaman about her desires, Manati declares her wish for Susanna not only to perish, but to endure suffering before her demise. In the meantime, Susanna experiences a terrifying moment as she suddenly chokes and retrieves a lock of hair from her throat, leaving her shaken. A few days later, while shopping in the market, Susanna comes across the poor Surya, who is diligently working. Upon noticing her approach, Surya begins to distance himself. Undeterred, Susanna follows him, attempting to initiate a conversation. When she inquires about his well-being, Surya responds with a question, expressing the pain of seeing her carrying another man's child. Susanna clarifies that she's acting for the sake of her family, and implores for his assistance if he still harbors feelings for her. She then reveals her sense of peril within Aryo's residence, where strange occurrences happen around her daily. Scared, the poor woman tells the man that she is suspecting the involvement of black magic. Surya is taken aback by this revelation, and Susanna presents the lock of hair that emerged from her throat the previous night. Soon, her maid Rati comes, and their conversation is cut short. She hands the lock of hairs to Surya and leaves. Several days later, Manati once again visits the shaman. She is frustrated that Susanna's pregnancy continues to progress, and questions why the girl hasn't met her demise yet. The shaman proposes a final solution, a spell called Banaspati, a fireball curse that guarantees Susanna's demise, albeit with a little price. When Manati demands to know the cost, the shaman brazenly suggests that she sleep with him. Despite her indignation at the outrageous demand, Manati's overwhelming jealousy towards Susanna leads her to reluctantly agree to the terms. Meanwhile, back at the house, Susanna begins to experience labor pains and summons her servant Ratty for assistance. Right then, her water breaks. As the midwife and Ratty aid Susanna in delivering her baby, the shaman performs a ritual to invoke the Banaspati curse upon Susanna. Susanna's cries of agony prompt Ario to enter the room to inquire about her condition, but the midwife informs him that she cannot yet see the baby. The shaman continues the ritual. Back in the labor room, the midwife and Ratty are terrified by unusual movements within Susanna's abdomen, causing them to retreat to a corner of the room in fear. Susanna, in a desperate attempt to seek their aid, approaches them, but the baby shifts from her stomach to her back, causing her to collapse onto the bed in excruciating pain. Moments later, her back tears open and explodes. Ario, hearing her screams, rushes into the room and is horrified by Susanna's distressing state. As he approaches her, Susanna succumbs to her injuries. However, against all odds, the baby miraculously survives. Later, Manati approaches Ario, suggesting that Susanna's unnatural passing indicates the use of black magic, and the girl was using it on them. What a shameless woman. She reveals that Susanna gave birth on the night of Cleone Friday, a detail of significance. When Ario inquires about the baby, Manati informs him that it's a healthy girl. Disappointed by the gender, Ario expresses his desire for a son, but Manati consoles him, attributing it to destiny. She promises to manage Susanna's funeral arrangements and ensure that the truth remains concealed. The next day, Surya intercepts Ratty, seeking updates on Susanna's condition and providing her with protective talismans against black magic. Overwhelmed by her emotions, Ratty divulges the tragic news of Susanna's demise during childbirth. She recounts the shocking detail that the baby emerged through Susanna's back, leading her to suspect foul play involving black magic. Shocked and enraged, Surya demands answers regarding the responsible party, but Ratty is unable to provide any. That night, consumed by grief, Surya visits the cemetery where Susanna is buried. He digs the grave and takes out her body to confirm Ratty's account by inspecting her back. Overcome with sorrow, Surya breaks down in tears as he cradles her lifeless form. The poor boy ultimately decides to take her body with him. The following morning, Surya awakens to the sound of someone calling his name. Despite searching around, he finds no one nearby, so he continues his journey with Susanna's body. Eventually, he pauses under a tree and senses that someone is trailing him. The mysterious voice inquires about the person he is carrying, prompting Surya to reveal that she was his lover who fell victim to black magic. Introducing himself as Samuel, the voice probes Surya about his intentions regarding his lover's body. Uncertain, Surya is confronted with the question of whether he wishes to revive his lover. Suspicious, he accuses Samuel of mockery, only to be stunned when Samuel reveals himself as the Grim Reaper. Hearing this, Surya considers Samuel a demon. Samuel tells him that Susanna's demise was marked by vengeance, enhancing her potential for retribution. He presents a proposition to resurrect Susanna. However, in exchange, Surya must give him the baby she gave birth to, as it is a child of the darkness. Without any second thoughts, Surya agrees to the deal. Samuel asks him to sit down and close his eyes. He warns him not to open his eyes under any circumstances until he says so and stresses the importance of delivering the baby to him, or else he will reclaim Susanna's soul. After some time, Samuel instructs Surya to open his eyes, and to his amazement, Susanna comes back to life. Surya is filled with joy at the sight of her resurrected, but his elation wanes as he notices that the wound on her back remains. When Susanna inquires about her baby, Surya becomes anxious, realizing that she still retains her memories. Observing the injury on her back, Susanna questions him about it. Suddenly, they hear a baby crying, diverting Surya's attention to a crow perched on a nearby tree. When he turns back, Susanna has vanished mysteriously. Following the sound of the crying infant, Susanna arrives at a scene where a mother is comforting her sobbing baby. Overwhelmed by longing and sadness, she watches the tender moment between them, yearning for her own child. Just then, a meatball vendor passes by and notices Susanna standing at the window. Startled and frightened, he quickly flees the scene. However, Susanna stops him and requests some meatballs. Pretending to be visually impaired and slightly deaf, he asks her how many servings she wants. She requests 10 bowls, and in his fear, he complies. Surprisingly, Susanna then asks for another 10 bowls, and before he can react, she consumes them all. As the vendor prepares to serve her the meatballs, he is horrified to discover that instead of meatballs, they have turned into eyes. Trembling with fear, he screams and begs her not to harm him. Susanna questions if he recognizes her, to which he denies, stating that he is not from the village. Just then, 2 men on a bike pass by. Startled by the sight of Susanna, they accidentally veer into a drain. Terrified, they abandon their bike and flee, prompting the meatball seller to also run away in fear. Witnessing the commotion, the man on the bike spreads the news of encountering a ghost, emphasizing the presence of a hole in the ghost's back. Policeman Rojali attempts to reassure the villagers, asserting there are no ghosts in the village. However, the villagers remain adamant, accusing the police of neglecting their duty. What would the police even do? Arrest the ghost or something? The other policeman assures them, pledging to apprehend any ghost if it exists. Meanwhile, back in the forest, Surya searches for Susanna. Susanna approaches and confronts him, accusing him of deceiving her. Perplexed, he asks for clarification, prompting her to question why people label her as a ghost. Surya apologizes and discloses the truth about her demise, revealing his pact with a demon to resurrect her. Baffled, Susanna questions why he did that, and he confesses his enduring love for her and his desire for being together forever. Expressing her profound affection for him, Susanna wonders if he's not frightened by her current state. Surya assures her that his love transcends her condition. After that, Susanna insists on rescuing her baby from Aryo and Manati's house, fearing for her safety. Surya leaves out his deal of handing over the baby to the demon and agrees to help her. In the meantime, the two police officers are on guard in order to catch and apprehend that ghost that has been bothering the people. The following day, Surya seeks Radha's assistance. Taking her into the forest, he calls out for Susanna, causing Radhi to tremble with fear at the mention of her name. Instructing Radhi to wait, Surya ventures deeper into the forest in search of Susanna. Meanwhile, Radhi is startled by a chilling female laughter surrounding her, and her gaze is drawn to Susanna perched on a tree. This sight instills intense fear within her. Attempting to flee, Radhi finds Susanna swiftly blocking her path. Just as panic grips her, Surya intervenes, halting Susanna and informing her that Radhi is here to assist them. Surya calms Radhi, assuring her that it is none other than Susanna. But Radhi is still in disbelief since she witnessed Susanna's passing firsthand. Terrified, she pleads with Surya not to entangle her in the situation. Just then, Susanna interjects, expressing her longing to see her baby. Surya also reassures Radhi, promising not to involve her. He says that their sole concern is knowing if the baby is safe and sound. Reluctantly, Radhi discloses that the baby is healthy, but voices concern about Manati's possible bad intentions since she harbors animosity towards the infant. Furthermore, Radhi reveals Manati's consultation with a shaman named Jaya, who purportedly pledged to safeguard their home from a malevolent entity seeking entry. Susanna queries why her parents aren't protecting the baby, to which Radhi reveals that Aryo relocated her parents to Surabaya and informed them only of Susanna's demise during childbirth. That night, Radhi leads Surya to meet Jaya. Surya confronts Jaya, acknowledging his role in safeguarding Aryo's house, and asks him to lift the protection. He says that Aryo and Manati are withholding the baby from its mother. Surya warns Jaya of the spirit's vengeance if he tries to intervene. However, Jaya scoffs and asserts confidently that Susanna stands no chance against him. He says that she isn't even able to breach the protection of his amulet, let alone harm him. Angered, Surya confronts Jaya, questioning if he was responsible for cursing Susanna. Attempting to retaliate, Surya is hit by Jaya's formidable powers. He claims that Surya underestimates his strength. With a powerful gesture, Jaya hurls Surya backward and probes about his relationship with Susanna. Radhi tries to intervene, but she is swiftly incapacitated by Jaya's force. Desperate, Surya asks Jaya to allow Susanna and her baby to live peacefully, but Jaya rebuffs. He declares that the revived woman was not his lover, but a vengeful spirit. Jaya moves to harm Surya, but Radhi bravely comes forth, sacrificing herself to remove Jaya's protective amulet and hurl it into the flames. This breaks his shield. With Jaya vulnerable, Surya seizes the opportunity to strike him down. Rushing to Radhi's side, Surya is urged by her to prioritize the safety of the baby before she succumbs to her wounds. Suddenly, Jaya launches an attack on Surya, rendering him unconscious. However, before Jaya can deliver a fatal blow, darkness descends, and the eerie laughter of Susanna fills the air. Susanna materializes behind Jaya, gripping his head and crushing it, ending his life. Meanwhile, Rojali and Japra set a trap to capture the ghost, hoping to gain recognition as heroes. As they are hiding in a corner, they hear a noise and witness Susanna approaching the offering. Just as she sits down, Japra lowers a cage, successfully ensnaring her. Thrilled at catching the ghost, both Rojali and Japra quickly approach her. Upon seeing her, Japra quickly identifies her as Susanna, Aryo's wife. He cautiously approaches her, while Rojali moves to lift the cage. Japra asks if everything is all right. and Susanna explains that she had a disagreement with her husband. When Rojali suggests bringing Aryo to her, she agrees. Taking Rojali aside, Japra questions his decision to involve Aryo. Rojali explains that if Aryo is grateful to them for locating and safeguarding his wife, he might owe them a favor. The poor men don't know that the wife they are safeguarding is all but perished. Rojali suggests writing a note to Aryo, informing him of finding his wife and expressing hope that he considers their debts settled. As Rojali heads towards Aryo's house with the note, it suddenly flies away with a gust of wind. The poor policeman attempts to fetch back the note, but it falls into a puddle of water and gets all wet and useless. Discarding the note, he goes to the house. Upon reaching Aryo, Rojali informs him that his wife is in the forest. Aryo gets angry and tells him that Manati is too scared to go to the forest alone at night. Hearing this, the man clarifies that it is Susanna. Astonished, Aryo instructs Rojali to lead him to Susanna. Meanwhile, in the forest with Susanna, Japra feels a sudden urge to relieve himself and leaves the area. Watching from a distance, Surya approaches Susanna and begins to lead her away. However, she halts and informs him of Aryo's impending arrival. Surya expresses concern, fearing that Aryo's presence could complicate matters and might even put the risk of harm from Manati. He proposes a plan, suggesting that since Rojali and Japra have already seen Susanna, they could provide a hiding place for her. After a while, Aryo arrives with Japra and Rojali. He tries to engage in conversation with Susanna, but when she turns around, her face changes. Aryo reprimands Japra and Rojali, insisting that the woman before them is not Susanna. However, Japra and Rojali remain convinced that she is indeed his wife. Frustrated, Aryo warns them that any further deception will have consequences and leaves. Not wanting to leave Susanna alone in the forest at night, Rojali takes her to his home. Shortly after, there's a knock on the door, prompting Susanna to suggest that Rojali answer it while she prepares food. Outside, Japra shares his suspicions with Rojali, suggesting that what they saw might not have been human, and that the ghost they were seeking was actually Susanna. Rojali mentions the absence of the wound on her back, but Japra counters, stating that ghosts can alter their appearance. He says that it is quite suspicious why Susanna was in the forest, and also mentions Aryo's men claiming Susanna's demise. This revelation alarms Rojali, but Japra shows him the ashes of a deceased person, explaining that according to his grandmother, ghosts will burn upon contact with ashes. They then return to the house and sit with Susanna. Japra informs Rojali that he obtained powdered ginger from the garden and requests him to serve it. As Rojali heads to the kitchen, Susanna offers Japra some noodles. Upon Rojali's return, Japra notices he has brought glasses containing ashes for all three of them. Japra stops Rojali from drinking, explaining that the ginger is intended for Susanna, and drinking them first would be impolite. However, Susanna says that she does not like ginger. The idiot Rojali takes a sip and immediately spits it out. The water sprays onto the noodles, which then transform into maggots. Susanna's appearance also changes, and she becomes menacing. However, Japra warns her to not move, due to the potential harm from the ashes. To their surprise, the ashes vanish, and they discover Susanna holding the jar. She shatters it, releasing the ashes into the air, reverting to her ghostly form and revealing the hole in her back. Terrified, Japra and Rojali attempt to flee, but they stumble, and Japra abandons Rojali in his haste. Before the men can flee, Surya intervenes, bringing both of them back and confirming that she is indeed Susanna. He reveals that Aryo and Manati employed a shaman to use black magic on her, resulting in Susanna's demise. Surya emphasizes the danger to Susanna's baby if Aryo and Manati are not stopped. Seeking their assistance, he asks them to allow Susanna to stay with them until her baby is saved. The men agree. The following day, Manati arrives at Jaya's place and discovers his lifeless body, leaving her terrified. That night, as Manati combs her hair, she senses a presence above her and is horrified to see Susanna. However, Susanna vanishes moments later, leaving Manati unsettled. She hears Susanna's eerie laughter before being attacked from behind, but Aryo arrives in time to intervene. Manati pleads with Aryo to hire someone to protect their house from Susanna, but he dismisses her, insisting that Susanna is perished. Manati reveals her visit to the shaman's house, only to find him slaughtered. She takes Aryo to Susanna's grave, informing him of her resurrection. Aryo remains skeptical, suggesting that perhaps Surya was the one who did these deeds. However, Manati stresses that it could not have been the work of a human. She says that the shaman's gruesome demise is but the work of a supernatural entity. She implores Aryo to trust her, revealing her jealousy-driven use of black magic on Susanna. Frustrated and blaming Manati for their predicament, Aryo walks away. Later, they summon a shaman to dispel Susanna's ghost. Upon seeing Susanna's baby, he predicts that if the woman has transformed into something supernatural, she will seek her child. The shaman provides Manati with protective items against the entity's powers and promises to return after sensing its presence. When Manati asks about hiring additional men for house protection, he says it is useless. The following night, Japra and Rojali inquire with Aryo's thugs about attending a party. They propose attending for an hour, after which they will depart. The thugs approve of the idea and seek Gus's approval, which he grants. At the party, Susanna, disguised as a beautiful girl, intoxicates Aryo's henchmen. Later, she visits Aryo's house as Ratty, claiming to have visited her sick mother. When questioned by Aryo about her whereabouts, Aryo scolds her for not informing them, especially since she is responsible for the baby, and instructs her to go inside. After she leaves, Aryo questions Rojali and Japra about the whereabouts of the others. Learning they are at the party, Aryo asks Japra to accompany him to bring them back. Inside, Ratty is making her way to the child's room when Manati intercepts her and questions her whereabouts. Ratty explains that her mother fell ill the previous day, and she had already informed Aryo about it. Expressing her intention to check on the baby, Ratty then proceeds to the child's room. However, Manati harbors suspicions regarding Ratty's explanation and decides to tail her. Along the way, she detects a foul odor lingering in the air. Filled with anticipation, Susanna, disguised as Ratty, enters the room, expecting to finally reunite with her baby. However, her joy turns to shock and anger when she discovers the empty crib. Distraught, she confronts Manati, demanding to know the baby's whereabouts. In response, Manati reveals an object given to her by the shaman. However, Ratty remains unfazed by Manati's revelation and questions what it is. Manati dismisses it as nothing and reassures Ratty that the baby is safe in her bedroom. As Ratty departs, Manati employs the mirror provided by the shaman to observe her. To her horror, she discovers that the person she's been following is not Ratty, but Susanna in disguise. The mirror falls from her hand in shock and breaks. Susanna finally returns to her true form. The house erupts in tremors and all the lights explode. Gus quickly enters the house to check on Manati. There he catches sight of Susanna's reflection in the mirror behind him. However, upon turning around, she vanishes, heightening his... Suddenly, Susanna materializes in front of Gus, causing him to stumble in surprise. Attempting to escape, Gus finds himself blocked by Susanna, who unleashes maggots from her decaying wound. These disgusting insects fall onto Gus's face and mouth. With a swift motion, Susanna slams him on the wall before dragging him into the darkness. As Aryo returns with his drunk goons, Rojali informs him of a scream heard from inside the house, followed by a sudden blackout. Aryo asks if he checked inside, and the man innocently replies that since he forbade him from leaving his post, he didn't. Investigating further, Aryo discovers Gus's lifeless body, brutally slain. Upon locating Manati, who is trembling in fear in the bathroom corner, Aryo attempts to reassure her, but she insists that Susanna is after her. Recognizing the danger, Aryo decides they must vacate the premises. Shortly after, additional thugs storm the house in search of Aryo and Manati. On the other side, Surya also enters the house. Encountering Surya, the thugs launch an assault, prompting Surya to defend himself vigorously. Meanwhile, Susanna begins to haunt one of the thugs before manifesting before him. Despite his efforts to harm her, Susanna remains impervious to his attacks. With a single forceful strike, she flings him into the fireplace, engulfing him in flames. Meanwhile, the remaining thugs manage to capture Surya and prepare to execute him. However, Susanna intervenes just in time, thwarting their plans and rescuing Surya. With her supernatural abilities, she bends the machete of one thug, while another knocks Surya to the ground. The thugs then utilize objects given to them by the shaman. One of them begins playing a flute, while the other unveils a dagger believed to be capable of slaying powerful demons like her. Before they can hit Susanna, Surya seizes an opportunity and launches himself at the flute player. This enables Susanna to eliminate both the threats swiftly. As soon as the thugs are taken care of, Manati and Aryo arrive at the scene. They attempt to use her child as a shield. At that moment, the shaman arrives and launches his attack. Aryo, resorting to firearms, fires at Susanna, causing her to collapse onto a nearby table. Surya intervenes, attacking Aryo and severing his fingers with a machete. As the shaman readies himself to strike a fatal blow to Susanna, Aryo and Surya's sudden appearance causes a distraction, allowing Surya to seize the gun and injure the shaman. Weakened by the shaman's assault, Susanna collapses. Surya rushes to her side and tenderly removes all the nails embedded in her body. Empowered by the removal of these restraints, Susanna utilizes the same nails as weapons to eliminate the shaman. With the threat neutralized, Susanna raises the gun, intent on ending Ario's life. Despite Surya's pleas to spare him, stressing the urgency of rescuing her child from Manati, Susanna resolves to take out Ario. After that, she relentlessly pursues Manati, who attempts to flee, warning her not to advance or risk her life. Ignoring the warning, Manati takes the child away, but Susanna manages to save the infant from harm. Taking a moment to ensure the safety of her child, Susanna then turns her attention to Manati. While Susanna deals with Manati, Surya gently holds the child, ensuring her well-being. Susanna then exacts her revenge by inflicting upon her the same fate that she herself had faced. With Manati subdued, Susanna instructs Surya to hand over the child. She asks Surya to use the machete on him so that they can live together forever. Shocked by her request, Surya hesitates, torn between love and morality. Realizing the gravity of his actions, Surya grapples with the moral weight of his decisions. Unable to go through with Susanna's request, he drives a nail into her head, silently witnessing her final moments. Faced with the consequences of their tumultuous past, Surya tenderly apologizes to Susanna. He finally accepts her demise. Surya vows to honor Susanna's memory and promises to reunite with her someday. He tenderly lays her to rest the following day, only to be confronted by Samuel. The demon tells him that he broke his vow. Acknowledging his mistake, Surya defends his decision to protect the innocent child. He says that Samuel can come for him after his passing. Surya sees this act as his atonement for his past sins. The movie ends with Surya and the little girl growing up happily together.